Pittsburgh Steelers fans, it is time once again for another episode of The Hangover. For all of you Pittsburgh Steelers fans out there that are nursing one, not a good one, after a loss to the Cincinnati Bengals, 3 out of the 4 men on your screen are nursing a hangover that is face down in the mud, feeling crappy, wondering what I did last night. And the one final piece of the puzzle here is a gentleman on the BTSC network. You can hear him every week on We Run the North, representing the Cincinnati Bengals. It's B-Dirt, Brandon Harriet. What is up, Brandon?
Oh, not much, Bad. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, I had a pretty good weekend this weekend. Michigan fan, and we pulled one out last second, and then the Bengals win. Pretty good weekend for me.
Don't get me started on Michigan. Your hangover's pretty
Michigan,
good.
baby. Go blue.
Where's that come from, Tony?
They're playing Ohio State. Right? Who are you going to root for?
I hate Ohio State. I hate Ohio State.
Yeah,
it's the lesser of two
I hate
evils,
Ohio State.
right,
What can I
Tony?
say? I can't stand Ohio State.
Yeah, but
I like
White,
Michigan. I actually like Michigan.
Shannon, back me up on this. When you throw a Harbaugh into the equation, all bets are off, right?
Oh, I can't stand the Harbaughs.
So, you know what they say, muck. No, wait, I can't do that. So anyways,
Yeah.
So I mean, gosh,
And I can understand that. Harbaugh's rubbed me the wrong way sometimes too. He has that smugness about him that's just, it's special. It's special.
well, we've got a lot of questions for you about the game, about the state of the Steelers, being from a Bengal standpoint, and we also want to know what it's like being a Bengal fan living in the 412. Unless you're one of those 724ers, but
No, I'm a 412. I'm about 3 miles from the stadium.
All right, so we definitely need to talk about that too. And fans, live chat, give this guy a break. He is one of the very respectable. He's very respectful as well when it comes to Steelers and Bengals. I love it. That's one of the reasons he understands. He definitely understands the concept of anybody's allowed in your living room as long as you don't piss on the couch. So with that being said,
and honestly jealous. I mean, if you look at franchises in sports history, I mean, the Steelers are right there with anybody, any sport, anywhere, as far as tradition. And I've been very jealous because I haven't had that. The pain that you're feeling right now is normally me 9 out of 10 years in a decade. You know what I mean?
Well, before we get started, I've got one question. Have you met Crying Bengals fan?
I have not. It's a great meme, though. It's a great meme. I've met Pittsburgh Dad, and I've actually spoke to him about the crying fan. But yeah,
it took me a long time to embrace the concept of Pittsburgh Dad, and now I'm completely 100% in. I couldn't stand the shtick for years. Now I'm like, this guy's great. So we need to get him on the show. And if we can get in like 17 seconds, if we can get Crying Bengals lady on the show, not just you, B-Dirt, are out. We're getting rid of Tony too, just to bring her on. All right.
Wait a minute. No. First of all, she's married because she's very lovely. So you guys are married. So why do you ask to go?
Well, okay. Oh, so you're going to hit on Crying Bengals lady on our show?
Who, me?
No, Tony.
There's some things that are more important than football. Well, there's some things that are more important than football. I'm sorry.
Okay.
If you're bringing more Bengals fans on the show, just take me off.
Oh,
you've hit the quota, right?
There you go. Easy peasy.
Tony is just, don't worry, Shannon. Tony just wants a date out of the deal. So I mean, that's fine and dandy. Let's get on to the game. So final score of 38-31. Steelers at halftime were up 20-17 and did, as Dave Schofield talked about on our show yesterday, they did one thing that we were worried that the Bengals were going to do the Steelers. At the end of that half, get the ball back, stop them, get the ball back and score. And that was pretty impressive. And everybody felt good if you were a Steeler fan going in to the locker room. Shannon, what was your knee-jerk reaction then?
Well, as you know, because we already talked about it, I talked on our Know Your Enemy podcast on Wednesday night with Frank that the Bengals are the best at making them halftime adjustments, and they routinely shut down offenses in the second half. And I was very concerned, even though they had a 3-point lead, because the Bengals are good at making halftime adjustments, and Matt Canada and the Steelers are not. So I was not very confident going into the second half. I was hopeful, because I'd seen a lot of improvement out of Kenny Pickett in the offense, but I was still very concerned, and my fears were proven correct in the second half.
Tony, if you were not too busy swiping right and swiping left, let me ask you this. What was your opinion of the Steelers going in to the locker room with a lead?
I was very impressed with the offense. I think it was the best look all season. Pickett looked really sharp. He was making good decisions, and the running game continued to be good. From the previous week, it continued. I thought that run by Najee Harris, that might have been the best run of his career as far as and it was well executed by the line. So I thought I was actually more concerned about the defense going into halftime, because and something that people don't talk enough about with this defense this year is, when they scored their first touchdown, Pittsburgh, the defense immediately allowed the Bengals to march down the field and take a 17-10 lead and lose. I was concerned about the defense. It was slow Joe Burrow and company down in the second half, and unfortunately, I was proven correct. But I also was disappointed that the offense kind of fell apart in the second half too.
Okay, Brandon, let's go to a different perspective. Where were you as a Bengal fan watching this game and seeing that, wow, the Steelers have come to play?
Yeah, I actually, Kevin Tate, who I'm on the We Run the North with, I texted him at halftime and said, I think that's the most complete half I've seen the Steelers play all year. Had some good return yards. I thought the defense played fairly well. I mean, look at how we scored touchdowns in that first half. Burrow was almost perfect. Like, he had to be almost perfect in order to put points on the board. So I was a little nervous. Now, to Shannon's point, I have seen Lou Anarumo has done a fantastic job with halftime changes. So I was hoping they'd figure something out, but I was not in a comfortable position for sure. I thought it was imperative that we stopped you on that first possession.
And definitely did. And the biggest problem now, Steeler fans, of course, are complaining about the offense and complaining about what happened in that game. But, and you could see if you're watching Tony, he just gave the eyes, and I agree with him. The biggest complaint is you're complaining about Kenny Pickett's play and the play calling, which I'm always going to complain about the play calling, especially when you came out in the second half and got cute. But the defense let this team down all game. And when the Steelers finally scored more than 20, the offense scored more than 20 points. They scored 30. And when they do that and the defense gives up 37, you could say, hey, you could point fingers at us all you want on offense. But defense, you've got TJ Watt back. What's going on? So let me start with Tony on this one. Where are you putting blame on in this game? I mean, not that we want to play the blame game, but it was bad scheme, worse execution on defense, or is there more?
Well, I mean, as far as the defense, we're on both sides of the ball placing blame.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead.
I think it's okay to yeah, it's okay to blame equally. Yeah, I think doing Pittsburgh and we always like to make excuses for defense, but the defense was not good on Sunday. I don't care what anybody says. There were a couple of good moments. They had a couple of good. They gave the offense a couple of good opportunities with takeaways, but the pressure on Burrow is kind of hit him. They got to him they hit him 7 times. They sacked him twice, but it seemed like he was in control of the entire game, and he could do pretty much whatever he wanted. And Joe Mixon left with a concussion. Green came in, and they really extended the pass defense with him out of the backfield. So I think the defense deserves just as much blame. I'm not saying the offense doesn't deserve blame, because I think there were really some poor decisions in the first half and in the second half, but especially the second half. But I think the defense deserves more blame than people are giving it today.
You know what? I'm looking at a message from my good friend Captain Underpants, great friend of the show. He's
Great
saying bad. The defense took the ball away twice, and they gave them the ball in Bengals territory. And you definitely know that he's serious when he says that, because that's in all caps. So and I get that. I definitely get that. Okay, go ahead, Tony.
Oh, I thought you were going still. No, I just want to say, that's a point. Another point I wanted to make is earlier in the year when they gave up 16 points or 17 points, but they didn't have any takeaways or sacks. People said, well, you did enough to win. They did enough to win. Well, now yesterday they gave up, 34 points. The 37, the last three, that was on the offense after, they stopped them on fourth down late in the game, deep in Pittsburgh territory. But the body of work suggests that the defense didn't do enough to win that game. In fact, the body of work suggests that the defense did more to lose it than the offense did. That's my opinion. 2 takeaways or not, they still gave up 37 total points.
All right, I am guilty here of stirring some stuff up, because here's the thing. Look, there were some great plays on offense and some great plays on defense. One of the most beautiful defensive line plays I've ever seen, when you have TJ Watt going up and taking that ball away. Also, I really think a guy like Levi Wallace is starting to come on. It's almost like he's a Kella Witherspoon from last year. In the second half of the season, he's becoming worthy of another deal, even though I don't think his deal's up next year. It's not. So, Shannon, let me ask you this. Am I stirring things up when I'm trying to say who was worse, offense or defense? Because in my mind, really, the whole team is guilty.
You shouldn't have to stir anything up. The offense is the youngest and the cheapest offense in the NFL, and the defense is the most expensive. And you tell me, why they don't deserve the lion's share of the blame. They're making the lion's share of the money. I mean, all I've heard about is Ben got blamed for everything when he was here, especially towards the end. He's not mobile, his arm shot, blah, blah, blah. He got blamed for everything, and they say comes with the territory. Well, now the defense is the highest paid in the NFL, and they sure didn't look like it yesterday. They have the same issues I've been, pounding on all year, and that the defensive line outside of Cam Hayward was invisible yesterday. The inside linebackers can't cover their own shadow, and the cornerbacks are slow, very, very slow. They have to get a number one cornerback. That way they could have put him on Higgins yesterday and kept him from just destroying them. And Spillane in coverage on Perrin, whatever his name is, the backup running back for the Bengals. I was having flashbacks to a New England game with Tom Brady and them back in the day, because that's how they were killing them. They had 3 or 4 receptions over 20 yards by their running backs off dump-offs. That is unacceptable. So you got a young offense with a rookie quarterback, and everybody wants to blame him and throw him under the bus, and you got the highest paid defense in the NFL playing like that. I mean, that's no brainer. Man, you don't have to stir anything up. Only if somebody's ignorant.
All right. I think your high paid guys, though, earned their paychecks. You know what I mean? The high paid guys made some splash plays, looked good. Hayward looked good. TJ looked good. Fitzpatrick played okay. It's the rest of the team. There's not as much depth. They need, like, those other pieces need to be shored up a little.
Yeah, well, they're paying the high price guys too much, or they need to keep some of that money and pay for better backups, because that, again, their issues are the same thing it's been for the past couple of years, and they've just had star power that has taken the spotlight off of those weaknesses is depth in the supporting players, and that's bad job by the front office, and that needs to change moving forward.
All right, I wanted to throw something to Brandon, but I wanted to throw in one of these something that he just brought up with Minka. I did not think Minka was good yesterday. I thought Minka was rushed back to the field And I thought he should have, taken that entire game off, because sometimes when you are not 100%, and there's no way he was, just by watching him in the eye test, I thought that there was no way that he was 100% in that game yesterday. So I'm going to ask B Dirt first, and then I'm going to go around with everybody else. Should have Minka played yesterday, just coming off of an appendectomy not that long ago?
I mean, I get why he would want to play. That was really a pivotal point. A big difference from winning and losing that game in the standings, right? So I get why he was trying to rush back. I think when I say I don't think he played poorly, but he's got an incredible football IQ, and I think that was putting him in good situations and being close around the ball. But I think a lot of times maybe he gets a hand on some of those balls, or maybe he gets to that, knocking that play out where he wasn't quite there. He was maybe a step off yesterday. That's a lot of core strength that you got to do when you're twisting and turning and moving, and that's where that surgery is. Could that have affected it? Absolutely.
I have had laparoscopic surgery, and I tell you what, it took me a long time to recover, and that's just going to the computer and going to work. I'm not doing what he has to do on the field. So I understand that completely. Shannon, yes or no? Minka, should have he been sat out? Not just his decision, but the team's decision.
Well, again, you want to respect a proven veteran player. He knows his body better than anybody does. And he's saying, hey, I want to play. I think that, as Brandon said, you could tell early that he wasn't the same Minka, and they did a good job of avoiding him as well. So that limited his effectiveness as a ball hawk. But I respect him for wanting to play. But again, you know how I feel about it. This is a rebuilding season, and I'm thinking long term, and I'm thinking about his long term future. And I wouldn't have risked putting him out there to have some kind of maybe eternal injury, getting hit right with a helmet or something right in that area. I didn't think it was worth it. But everybody still wanted to say, oh, they win this game, and they can get on a winning streak, and they can be back in playoff contention. And that was a pipe dream. And hopefully now we'll hear less of that and more focusing on the future development of Pickett, Freiermuth, Pickens. There's a lot to build on there. But one thing that we're missing too is Mason Cole's absence in the second half was very impactful for the Steelers. Mason Cole calls out the protections of the line. He's the leader of the line, and Pickett really relies on him, and he has a comfort level. And he's a definite upgrade over Hassenauer, who's he tries really hard. But that was an impactful injury to lose him at halftime.
You know what? I will agree with that, Shannon. I don't think anybody on this, with the exception of B Dirt, would want Mason Cole to go back to Minnesota, because I tell you what, I really think he has done his job and done it well. I'm going to add somebody to the mix. I'm going to ask Tony about this next. We know you agree on the Mason Cole, your situation, losing him yesterday, and he showed up in a boot today. So, that's not good. But do you feel equally as missed was Jaylen Warren, Tony?
Oh, he should. He could have definitely made a big difference in the second half. I mean, he's got the he's definitely faster than Harris for sure, and he has. They seem to have found a way to utilize him out of the backfield. So he's definitely a weapon they could have used over the final 2 periods of yesterday's game. So I definitely think his hamstring injury may have hindered that offense in the second half. But I have a question for you guys, because talking about Fitzpatrick playing yesterday, I didn't see a whole lot of Kazee, and I was really excited about him after the Saints game. We heard so much of the three safety set that they were going to use, but am I crazy? Did they utilize that much on Sunday? Because I think the secondary was certainly exploited by guys like T. Higgins on Arthur Millette. He looked like William Gay covering Rob Gronkowski back in 2010. I mean, it was a total mismatch. I'm wondering, somebody like Kazee, who is really fast, and doesn't he have a history playing in the slot too? I'm surprised why I didn't see a whole lot of him on Sunday.
You know, Shannon, I'll let you answer that because that's a question for guys like Shannon, Dave, definitely KT Smith, Jeffrey Benedict. Shannon, what are your thoughts on that?
They ran the 3 safety sets a good amount of time. I was not impressed with the results, but again, the Bengals were prepared for it and they did a good job of avoiding it. They knew the mismatches that were going to be there, and whoever was covering Higgins was an automatic mismatch, and whoever was covering the back out of the backfield was a mismatch. And if you look at the numbers, the majority of Burrow's success came in those 2 aspects. So they sometimes they got Higgins matched up, as you said, on Millette. They got him matched up one time on Bush. So I mean, they figured out ways to avoid Kazee and Fitzpatrick. And Edmonds, of course, is he's a really good box safety. But the weaknesses was basically the inside linebacker coverage and any corner who was covering Higgins.
Any way you slice it, it was a disappointing day. And what we want to do next after the break, we want to go to Brandon Harriet, our resident from We Run the North. If you haven't had a chance to check out that show, it is absolutely fantastic. It debuts on Saturdays around noon on our podcast network here. Of course, Kevin Tate Boys, who's been with us for a good bit over almost 2 years now. And, bringing in guys from, every aspect and every team in the North. You even have Chicago Bears guy in there too, every once in a while. So it's great stuff. It is one of my it really feels like to me, like I'm in an AFC North bar and I'm just like listening to these guys talk. So it's fantastic. And I tell you what, one thing that they do definitely on that show is they respect each other's teams, which I really love too. So we're going to talk to B Dirt when we come back and get his philosophy and his view of the Pittsburgh Steelers from outside the black and gold. So we're going to do that when we come back right after this on the show, The Hangover on BTSC.
Ain't the worst looking man you've ever seen. There I am on the subway train, sitting between 2 finest girls.
It's funny every time we play worst looking man, Tony scowls there. No, it says we're not the worst looking men you've ever seen. So there you go. Great song. That is the Jerry Cherry Band.
Oh, I'm just reading the live chat.
Oh, I have the live chat turned off right now, not because, and if you do see a super chat, please let me know. I was just looking at some other things here, so I do not want to miss a super chat. If one comes in, please let us know. Looks like we have not had any so far. Oh my gosh, who knows what is going to be happening here on the live chat. Great music bads is the forward and our very own, our house band. B-Dirt, I don't know if you know this. You guys don't have this on We Run the North.
I did not know this.
But you actually do, because we go ahead and throw them in. We throw it in on your show. I put the music in, but Jerry Cherry Band. And Jerry Cherry is one of our longtime followers here on the live chat, and we'll probably see him coming in a little bit. He does he has 2 or 3 albums on Spotify, on Apple iTunes, all kinds of stuff. Really good band. And when you hear that, that's all from Jerry Cherry. And I believe he's a one-man band, if I'm not mistaken. So let's go ahead and get into this. Before we get in to B Dirt, I got to bring up Monster here. So Monster listens to my show. I could tell he does, because you see Hard Times with 3 exclamation points. When you guys think of Hard Times, anything in the last 40 years, you think of Hard Times, what do you think of? Go ahead, Tony. I know you got it.
Dust the roads, Daddy.
The American Dream, Dust the Roads.
In fact, my cousin texted me. Yeah, my cousin texted me that video after the game, because my other cousin said Hard Times. No, I don't think she realized what she was saying. And my other cousin texted that to us.
Well, that might not be the reason why, Tony. And the main reason why is because I did my Dusty Rhodes impression yesterday on doing the Hard Times promo. It's hard times, Daddy. 30 years. They kick you in the butt, give you a watch, a gold watch, and say, a computer took your job, Daddy. So today, Jeff, who hates my Yinzer, Dave hates my Yinzer accent too, said, man, you should do that instead of your Yinzer accent on Bad Language. So Bad Language today is called Hard Times. I know none of you guys listen to my show, but if you do, go back. I think you'll enjoy a very Dusty Roadish Hard Times show today. So Monster, actually, he must have been paying attention because it's hard times, Daddy. So B Dirt, I will tell you, we when you hear the end of the show too, you will know that we absolutely love our WWE, our WCW, all of that stuff here on the show. And there's always a reference to it. Tony and I, when we had our Blog Talk radio show, we thought we were Ric Flair and Arn Anderson for years. And
Oh, that's great.
all right, so let's get into it. From a black and orange perspective, you talked about earlier how for years, there's been, a professional jealousy, envy over the Steelers, and now that the Steelers fans are going through hard times, it's something that you've seen a lot of, being a Bengals fan. So not only am I going to ask you what it's like to be a Bengals fan living in the 412, I want to find out basically what is your perception of the team and how do they fix this mess?
The perception of the Steelers?
Yes.
Okay. So being a fan in Pittsburgh of the Bengals is probably not as hard as most people would think it is. I do get some ribbing. I do get some jest and stuff like that, but no one's like, I don't get threatened with violence. I don't get things thrown at me.
Good, because it's laundry.
Yeah. But I do like, it's football, and my outlook on it is you can't play football with just one team. So there has to be two teams. I appreciate rooting against the other team. I appreciate rooting for my team, whatever it might be, but I don't get too serious about it. At the end of the day, I'm still going to sleep good, win, lose, or draw. So I don't get too carried away from that. So that probably helps with my disposition. I like watching football. I'm a football fan first, I would kind of say. I love the Bengals, but I love watching, like I'm going to watch the game tonight. I love watching all the football games. You know what I mean? So, I mean, that gives me an appreciation for whenever there's good play, good things going on. One thing that's really been kind of eye-opening, and I moved here in 2011. At that time, I grew up in Northwest Ohio, and I moved to Ann Arbor, Michigan. I moved here from Ann Arbor, Michigan. So it was very interesting. The dynamic of listening to sports talk radio was different here than what I was used to. There's so many, like, it seemed like people would pile on certain aspects. And like Shannon was saying, I immediately went into work today, and I'm listening to sports talk, local sports talk on the way in. Everybody's piling on Matt Canada. Everybody's piling on Kenny Pickett. Everybody's piling on. I get to work, and one of the guys who actually watches the network all the time he says, man, he goes, our offense just didn't do it. And I go, if I told you going into the game, you're going to score 30 points, would you thought you lost? Mm-hmm. He said, no. I said, okay. So I get, like,
thank you.
Jermaine Pratt was our linebacker, made a comment after the game that the Steelers kept running the same plays over and over again. So I get it wasn't perfect, right? I get that there probably are some things that need to change. But a lot like, I'll go reference the Jim Harbaugh thing. A lot like Jim Harbaugh, sometimes I think handcuffs our offensive coordinators to the point that we lose them every year or two, because I think he wants to run the ball more and do this and do that. I wonder how much of is there Tomlin pushing into that? Are there those kind of things? I don't know. I think Pickens has. I think Pickens is going to be an absolute stud in this league. I think Freiermuth, absolute stud. I think you have some really good pieces. I think Pickett's playing good for a first-year quarterback. Not great. He's made some bad decisions. I think the speed of the game when you first start in the NFL. But I don't think it's panic mode. I think it's drafting well, signing a couple free agents, and be right back in the mix next year. I really do. When I look at the Steelers, that's what I see.
So Shannon, I love what B Dirt just said there. So do you feel that it's something you've been saying for weeks and you have held on to this? And I love that Shannon resolves that, I'm going to hold on to this, and he sticks with it every single time. I've been accused of waffling from time to time, but Shannon sticks with this, and he has said that as long as I see some baby steps and some steps up that ladder, then this team's going to be fine. So are you still feeling that this team is going to be fine?
Most definitely. I've seen real growth out of Kenny Pickett yesterday. I've seen the offensive line. I mean, doing it against the Saints was one thing, but doing it against the Bengals when they had Reader back and they ran the ball really effectively and consistently until Mason Cole went out. If you notice, their running game production dropped precipitously in the second half after Cole was out. Now, some of that was some really bad play calling by Matt Canada. Some really questionable play calling. But still, I'm looking for the little incremental improvements. And you've seen that in the first half against a quality defense. And that is encouraging. I value Brandon's viewpoint from the aspect that he's seen Kenny Pickett, and he also seen Joe Burrow in his rookie year. And Burrow was in a very similar situation. Didn't have the offensive line in front of him, was getting beat to death, ended up getting his knee tore up and missing the rest of the season. But Kenny Pickett and Joe Burrow remind me of each other. They're a very similar quarterback. Pickett, neither guy is going to be compared to Herbert or Josh Allen or Mahomes, but they are guys who have the moxie, they have the leadership, they have the ability, the mobility, and the arm talent to be successful in the NFL. Burrow is a year ahead of Pickett. He's not older, but he has that year, 2 years actually of experience. So he's where he is, and he really blossomed last year once he got Chase to go along with Higgins and Boyd. Right now, Deontay Johnson is nowhere near a number one wide receiver. George Pickens will be the number one wide receiver in Pittsburgh. He has the ability. He lacks the maturity. There needs to be a time. Yesterday, the dancing and the wiping the snot off your nose after you get a first down and signaling for a first down when you really didn't get a first down and then dropping the touchdown pass at the end of the game that was a perfect throw that hit him right in the hands. That's very Lima Swede-like.
That's a bold statement.
From a blast from the past. He just needs maturity. If I'm not mistaken, he's 21 years old. He's still a kid, and he still needs to mature. And, if you're going to draw attention to yourself and you do something right, you have to be mature enough to handle the extra scrutiny that comes when you do something wrong. He turned the drop touchdown pass into a spearing a down player when Boyd had that recovery and was laying just flat on the ground prone. It was over. And instead of just tagging him down, he led with his helmet, and he deserved to be ejected. That was frustration after dropping that pass. And, he was embarrassed and upset. And then you can have a fire burning in you, but you got to control how you blaze. And I think sometimes that's why he fell to the second round, because sometimes he allows that fire to burn out of control. And we've seen a glimpse of that late in the game. So I expect that to improve with more maturity.
All right, Tony, I want to ask you a question because this was brought up, and it was Jermaine Pratt that B Dirt mentioned, and Shannon was definitely shaking his head in agreement. When an opposing player says something like that, and we've seen this from the Cincinnati Bengals a lot over the years. The one that hurt the most was maybe last year with Tyler Boyd saying, they quit. We made them quit. That's one thing. But when you go ahead and say that we knew everything that was going to happen because it's something they do all the time and it was no surprise to us and it was easy to shut it down, well, I got to tell you, that's on us as Steeler fans and as Steeler Nation, but on the team. That is on Matt Canada. That's on Mike Tomlin for allowing Matt Canada to do that. Tony, where do you stand with that? Because I'm still looking to remove the offensive coordinator. Not this season. It's not going to happen this season. You don't have to do it this season. But in the offseason, I'm looking at that. I'm sure he's a great guy. I could go ahead and drink a Dr. Pepper with the guy. I'm sure it would be great. I'd be glad to watch Lethal Weapon for the 17,000th time with Matt Canada. That'd be no problem. I'd rub his head for good luck when Riggs and Murtaugh are like strung up by General McAllister's boys. I'll do all of that. I would love it, but just not as my offensive coordinator. So, Tony, I got to ask you, when Pratt says those things, how does it make you feel?
Well, it makes you feel, well, first of all, it's probably not much of a shock since they're division rivals and they played them in week 1. So I guess that, you have a tendency to pick up on your division rivals' tendencies in that regard. But I think it also speaks to the fact that you have a rookie quarterback, and from what I understand, he's not allowed to make audibles. He's not, so when you can't audible out of a play, that you're limited. And from what I understand from Charlie Batch, listening to the postgame show on Sunday, he's not allowed to. There are no hot reads. If a quarterback and the receiver, if they read a blitz, there's no hot read for that. So, you see Pickett out there scrambling around often, and it seems like he has nobody to throw to. And I wonder if that's part of the problem. They're limiting him way too much, and they're being far too cautious with him as a rookie quarterback. And in that circumstance, to pick up on opponents' tendencies, and when somebody like Jermaine says they're running the same plays over and over again, to me, it speaks to having a very limited playbook. And I don't know if that's on Canada, Tomlin, or the fact that it's on Kenny Pickett for being a rookie quarterback. So, but I don't blame Pickett, because I'm sure he would like to have more responsibility. I put it on Canada for having such a playbook, because he's being overly cautious and limiting his youngster. But you also heard the same thing about Trubisky. They limited him and they wouldn't let him make audibles. And I wonder what's going on with that, because it's one thing to do it with a rookie quarterback, but it's quite another to do it with a veteran quarterback. And to me, that speaks to Canada's ego.
All right. So one thing that happened on the preview yesterday, gentlemen, I'm going to ask all three of you, what do you think of this? And everybody, there's that certain faction that they're in the Mason camp, and they're saying Mason Rudolph would have done better this entire time. What do you say to that? Because what I say to that is, if Mason Rudolph was good enough to be QB1 in Pittsburgh, he'd be QB1 in Pittsburgh. I'm going to start with B Dirt. What do you think?
Well, I'll harken back to Andy Dalton. I was one of the guys that wanted to move on from Andy Dalton, because I thought maybe Andy Dalton could play good enough to not lose you games, but I didn't think he'd play good enough to win you games. You knew what you had there, right? You had a game manager. You had Trent Dilfer won a Super Bowl. We were going to have to win a Super Bowl the same way if we were going to win it, if we had Andy Dalton in my mind. I felt the same way about Mason Rudolph. Could he not lose you some games? Sure. Is he going to win you games? No. So move on. It's time to go to the next thing.
Shannon White, I could tell right away. I know you're ready to explode. So I'm going to just phrase this a little bit differently. Isn't this supposed to be, when you are 3-7 at this point, are you bringing in Mason Rudolph for anything other than to give up on Kenny Pickett?
Mason Rudolph shouldn't see the field unless Kenny Pickett and Mitchell Trubisky are both dead.
Whoa!
Why would you play a guy who's already proven that he is not the future at the position when you have Kenny Pickett, who you invested a first-round draft pick in, and he's showing growth each week and has had 2 games in a row without an interception? Yesterday, he rolled out late in the game. It was 4th down when they turned the ball over, as Tony was talking about, and give up the field goal. And everybody's like, why didn't he just chuck it deep like a punt? You know, and even if they intercept it, then, you know, it's better than throwing it out of bounds like he did. But he is being programmed. It's in his head. Protect the ball, because he's getting so much slack from, you know, and grief from everybody talking about, oh, you know, he's had 2 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 2 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. He's a bum. You know, people want him to fail because they didn't want the Steelers to pick a quarterback in the first round to begin with. Well, it's past that. Now you have to support him. You have to try to, you know, the fans, there's a large percentage that are almost like rooting for him to fail. And I do not understand that. If you go back and watch the film, half the times if he does get out of the pocket, he does not have anybody working back to him. They're not trying to get across the field to get in position for him to throw him the ball. Deontay Johnson, if he starts out on one side, he stays on that side. And if he ain't getting the ball, he's just like, you know, it drives me bonkers. It really does. You know how I feel about it. Him falling down before he gets touched and all those kind of things. That's why I did not want them to spend that money on him in the offseason and try to build an offense. It's him being one of the main focal points. And we already see now that the offense running through Harris, Pickens, and Freiermuth is much better than the offense that was running through Harris, Johnson, and Claypool. So let Pickett grow. Give him a chance. But anybody that's talking about Mason Rudolph, I can't even understand that unless you're not only giving up on this season, you're giving up on the future.
Well, Tony, follow that.
Well, I mean, you know, I have a higher opinion of Mason than obviously Shannon does. But I still think Kenny Pickett's on the future. And you know, we'll then say bring Mason Rudolph, and now they're just grasping at straws. They're trying to fix things with a Band-Aid. And basically, you just have to keep going through it. Like I keep saying, you have to keep going to get to the other side. And it's not pretty often with a rookie quarterback on a young team. And that's what we have right now. There's a rookie quarterback on a young team. It's an unproven team. And there's a lot of questions that still need to be answered. So no, you don't bring Mason Rudolph in. No, you got to stick with Kenny Pickett. You don't bring Mitch Trubisky in. You don't do anything to try to get closer to 500 unless it happens organically with Kenny Pickett. That's it. That's where they're at right now. It's not pretty, but he is showing flashes. And I thought yesterday, Sunday, was maybe his best game in the first half. And then the second half, the Bengals made the adjustments on defense. As Shannon said, they're the best at that. And they've shut a lot of other teams down in the second half this year besides the rookie quarterback, Kenny Pickett. He didn't adjust to it. Again, maybe that's not on him. Maybe that's on the coaches for not putting him in a better position to be productive in the second half of Sunday's game. But can I ask Brandon one question before? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, let me go ahead and ask you this question.
I'm done.
It's a follow-up. It's about the patience with Pickett. And we've seen for almost 50 years, well, where patience is a virtue. But here's a question for you. Who's the better rookie quarterback? Kenny Pickett or Terry Bradshaw?
Well, I mean, Kenny Pickett, of course. Terry Bradshaw, I mean, he was bad early on. I mean, he was so bad that he still hasn't gotten over the treatment that he got from the fans and his coaches because of how bad he was. So, you know, Dwight White once said we'd come off, we'd come and the offensive reel would be this, but the defensive reel yesterday because we'd force a punt, and then one play later we were back on the field. So yeah, Terry Bradshaw was pretty bad, but things got okay for him, I'd say.
Yeah, we know how that whole thing worked out, and we're happy about that. And thank goodness that Terry Bradshaw did not have internet and social media to have to deal with. That's all I've got to say.
Gosh.
To
Yes,
that.
oh my gosh.
All right, Tonester, you've got a question for B Dirt.
B Dirt, Brandon, you're a longtime Bengals fan, and you know that their history, especially since 1991 when they the last time they went to play. That's the year I graduated from high school. That's how old I am. So they had a long suffer. They suffered for decades. You suffered as a fan with them. What do you think was the turning point for them going from where they were in 2020 to making the Super Bowl last year? Because I'm sure Steelers fans would like to know from a Bengals fan what happened with their young quarterback and their young team. What put them over the top and finally get to where they are now?
So I'm going to give you a two-part answer to that. One was more of a philosophy change, I would say, from the top down. For the first time, there was an investor that came in with the Brown family because Mike Brown always ran it by himself. Now we have the Bradshaw family that's invested, and it gave us deeper pocketbooks. It gave us a new way of thinking. I think that's why you saw last year us go out and get offensive linemen in free agency and have some of those deeper pocketbooks. They sold the naming rights. I know that's kind of a touchy subject in this city, but they sold the naming rights to the stadium for the first time instead of Paul Brown Stadium. So that we had those, because you have that money in escrow when you're going to back up the Brinks truck for Joe Burrow. So I think there's some of that stuff. Honestly, they did a really good job getting a Woozier, getting some veterans on free agency on the defensive side that I thought shored up the defensive side. And then I was one of those guys banging the drum for us to take the tackle that went to the Lions and not take Jamar Chase, and I was so wrong. So
You've been there.
I think that's the piece that makes us pretty electric. That to me was the lightning in the bottle, because if you look at those, he single-handedly, in my mind, was the offensive weapon that beat the Chiefs, that gave the Titans fits. It changed everything in those playoffs. And listen, do I think we were the best team in the AFC last year? Nope. We were healthy and we were hot at the end of the season. Mm-hmm. And that's got a lot to do with it. And, I think I'm looking at the AFC right now. I see 5-6 teams again that if they're healthy and hot at the end of the year, there's 5 or 6 teams I think could make a run at it.
Sounds great, Brandon. We're going to get on out of here, and I do have a question for you. This is an interesting one because right now I feel that the Bengals are in a better position. They if they do get Jamar Chase back, then they're definitely going to make a run as well, and they have a chance to get hot at the end of this whole thing. So that would be something that Bengal fans would be excited about. But let's go into the fantasy world here, and I'm not talking about fantasy football. If you had a chance to take any Pittsburgh Steeler on offense, I was going to say any Pittsburgh Steeler.
Yeah, because you
but
knew I was.
You're going to say TJ Watt.
Yeah, 100%.
We're not doing that. If you're able to take,
I think TJ Watt after that pick, I think he's got better hands than Johnson does. Deontay Johnson. That was
definitely.
Me at 87 might have better hands than Deontay Johnson right now, but I don't think I'm going to get 87 with this team. So let's go ahead and take an offensive player. And who would you replace? That's the question. You have to replace a starter.
So I got to replace a starter in Cincinnati
with a Pittsburgh Steeler.
I would take Freiermuth. I would take Freiermuth and take Hayden Hurst out.
Yep. I tell you what, I talked to a gentleman from the unofficial Bengals podcast over the summer. That's how I got a chance to meet him. And Frank was on Know Your Enemy just a few days ago. And I said, hey, this was in the off season. A lot of people laughed at me, and he was the only one that backed me up when I said Pat Freiermuth is going to be a top 5 talent in this league. Do you feel that way?
Yeah, he's on my dynasty fantasy football team. So yeah, without a doubt.
12 targets yesterday. I would have liked to have seen him have 3 more, not have those 3 drops. But a great day once again for Pat Freiermuth, leading the team in yards and receptions right now, which is not what you're looking for out of your tight end, especially with some of the talent you have. But with that being said, thank you so much, B-Dirt. We can catch you every Saturday with the fellas with the NFL AFC North. We run the North podcast. It's a great show. Don't be a stranger to our show here, buddy.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. So this is it. Make sure you go head back and check out the post-game show from last night. It was pretty good. It was a good show, if I say so myself. Bad language this morning, which Tony and Shannon, I am going to have a test for you. You have to listen to it. As the podcast producer, I'm making you listen to my show just to get those 2 extra downloads. And we're going to have a little quiz to make sure that you listen to it. But with that being said, check out all of our shows. Coming up later on, you're going to have, in the morning, you're going to have a new episode of The Cutting Room Floor with Jeffrey Benedict, fellow Michigan fan, I believe. Then you're going to get a Michigan and Ohio State combo with the Steelers Fix at noon. And then you're going to get the Sco Bros tomorrow night. So make sure you check out all those great shows. People are making fun of Dwight Stone. He's my buddy. Dwight Stone's my buddy. I have him actually programmed in on my phone. We got to get him on here. Let's not rip on Dwight Stone when you have Deontay Johnson, but you're actually saying Deontay Johnson's better. Not as good. So that's great. Tony, go ahead. Tony, I thought you were going to say something.
I didn't say anything. No.
Okay.
Yeah, what's up? No. Sorry. I was just listening.
Nap 1963 says, Tony, make sure you check out his band at the Pittsburgh Cigar Alliance, the Smoking Blues, Wednesday night. Hey, you probably don't have to work the next day, so go ahead and check out Nap. B-Dirt, you want to hear a good band? Check them out. Nap 1963, one of our great listeners here as well. So I'm going to give them a plug, as I always will. So with that being said, Steelers fall to 3-7, but there's still plenty of season left and plenty of reasons to check everything out here. So for B-Dirt, for Tone Deaf, for Shannon White, my name is Bryan Anthony Davis. You could call me Bad. And just when you think you got all the answers,
Keep changing the question.
Shannon, take us home.
Woo!
A computer stole your job, Daddy. That's hot time.